Sasuke being a captive of the Divine Tree was revealed almost 2 years ago. Ever since then, we've always wondered what will be the consequences of this, and Chapter 25 has finally provided that answer. You see, Sasuke's fate isn't that of tremendous triumph. It is instead marked by a slow and painful death. Now, to understand what I mean by this, let's go to Chapter 25. We see that Konohamaru was able to revive Moegi using the Thorn Soul Bulb of Matsuri. She seemed fine for the most part but severely weakened. We later come to find out that while there wasn't any bone, muscle or tissue damage, her chakra flow was a tad bit sluggish. Her condition was compared to malnutrition, so she needs to eat a lot and get plenty of rest to recover. Now at face value, this might seem like not so much of a problem. Sasuke and the other captives should be fine similar to Moegi, but the problem is the time frame. You see, while there's no official statement on the passage of time since Chapter 1 of 2 Blue Vortex, we know that it hasn't been that long. At best, it has been a week or two since Code's invasion, which is when Moegi became a captive. Even so, during that short period of time, she was diagnosed with malnutrition and her chakra flow was slow to the point that she can barely function. Compare this to Shinki, who was only a Shinju for the time it took them to arrive in the Sand Village, which in Naruto took around 3 days. So at best, Ryu was around 3 days old or younger depending on modern modes of travel, which means he spent less time in this state than Moegi. The point here is that Shinki recovered faster than Moegi did, since he was able to release Gaara from the sealing jutsu, which likely means that the less time spent in this state, the less damage is done to the body. Now the problem for Mr. Sasuke is that he was placed in this state over 2 years ago, which means that a lot of damage has been done to his body. And given the extent to which Moegi's energy was siphoned in just a few days, Sasuke shouldn't even be alive anymore. So why is he? And what's happening to his body? Well, as stated by Boruto himself in Chapter 8, the Ten Tails is using their chakra, and that's why they're still alive. What this means is that while Sasuke's chakra should have been completely drained by now, the Divine Tree is intentionally leaving enough for him to stay alive. But again, the question is why? Well, the answer to that question hasn't been revealed as yet, and even Boruto himself says for what purpose he isn't sure as yet. Now some would say the purpose is obviously for them to remain a Shinju, but that can't be true. For one, the statement was made by Boruto in Chapter 8, and he has known about the Shinju for years, and even fought them in Chapter 4. He knows what the Thorn Soul Bulb is and also knows that the Shinjus are clones of specific individuals. So why would he say the purpose of keeping them alive isn't known yet, if it was simply to power the Shinju? And if that was the case, why wouldn't these trees be guarded? And what about the other captives that weren't turned into Shinjus? It simply doesn't make sense. Now, I also noticed something very interesting about Hidari's Thorn Soul Bulb. When Jiraiya came to the village in Chapter 13, he had the opportunity to kill Boruto but decided to head back to his base because apparently Hidari's bulb was beginning to rot. Mind you, it hadn't even been 2 minutes since Hidari was destroyed, but Jiraiya felt immediate action was imperative to the point that he would leave the one person he wants dead alive. Then we fast forward to the recent chapters and he didn't seem to care that much about the Thorn Soul Bulbs of Matsuri and Ryu. He was more so willing to let them rot just so he could get rid of Boruto. But why is that? Well, some believe that Boruto was simply a great threat that he wanted to prioritize, which doesn't really make sense since Boruto's threat level hasn't changed since Chapter 13 and now. So it actually makes more sense that he simply values Hidari's Thorn Soul Bulb over the others and is willing to sacrifice them to capture Boruto but not Hidari. With that said, there is another option. You see, this all goes back to the damage over time aspect of being a captive in these trees. If one becomes weaker the longer they've been a Divine Tree, it could also be the case that their Thorn Soul Bulb rots quicker as well. That would explain why Jiraiya had to quickly revive Hidari but didn't have the same urgency for Matsuri and Ryu. It would also explain why Jiraiya could have multiple long conversations and fights with Boruto and Kawaki, yet the bulbs remained unharmed, while Hidari's was apparently going to rot in under 2 minutes. His Thorn soul is simply older, which means it withers away quicker, and that could also be the reason why it keeps the captives alive. The lifespan of the Shinju is likely very limited, so while it isn't a symbiotic connection where if one dies the other one dies as well, the Shinju needs to refuel on the captive's chakra, or it simply withers away over time. That is why they spend so much time in the Shinju base itself, and likely why Hidari wasn't sent after Sarada despite her being active in the Sand Village. He simply hasn't fully recovered as yet and needs to remain in the base a while longer. This also then leads into my theory that the Shinju base is located deep within the planet itself, not Jigen's dimension. That would explain why the chakra from the captives gets sent to that base in the first place to form the Thorn Soul Bulb. All of them are connected to the root system the Tentacles spawned across the entire planet multiple years ago. So once that tree is created, it burrows deep into the ground and connects itself to that root system, and uses it to transmit the stolen chakra to that base. Now, I will say that what happens to someone captured by the Divine Tree is a tad bit convoluted. Take Kaguya for example. After casting the Infinite Tsukiyomi, she decided to release some of the humans from the Divine Tree because she didn't want the entire planet to die off. Instead, she sent groups of humans to the Tentacles over time, which would then allow the population to flourish and create more humans to be fed to the God Tree. What is important here is that the people she sent died very quickly, as seen when Hagoromo went to check on his friend that was sent there just a few days ago. She was found dead along with everyone else, which is how we awaken the Sharingan, by the way, if you take this as canon. But anyways, the point is that Sasuke is apparently still alive after being connected to the Divine Tree for over 2 years, which we know based on Sakura's statement is also draining his chakra, while the past captives of the God Tree died in a matter of days. Why is that? Well, one could say that this isn't a true Divine Tree, so its ability to absorb energy isn't as powerful as the main body, so one can simply survive for longer under these conditions. Or it could also be the case that it's based on intent. You see, Kaguya's goal wasn't to simply take the chakra of humans. She wanted to create an army to face the Otsutsuki. This was revealed in chapter 679, I believe, when Black Zetsu betrayed Madara. In response to Naruto saying that he'll kill everyone by draining their chakra, he corrected him by saying that he isn't going to kill anyone. Even when Kaguya previously casted the Infinite Tsukiyomi upon the populace, she preserved those people alive. In order to form her soldiers, they transformed into White Zetsu, so they've become transformed slowly over time. Now this could mean one of two things. Either the process is based on intent, and the reason why Sasuke is still alive unlike Hagoromo's friend is simply because killing them isn't the intention of this Divine Tree. He wants to keep them alive to maintain the Shinju body, and to heal them if they happen to be severely damaged, which would make sense. The problem, of course, being the Shinju-less captives being preserved as well, because if it was simply to maintain the source of the Shinju, why would it need to keep them alive as well? Something doesn't make sense. Now the next option is that it is keeping them alive, but only incidentally. What this means is that Sasuke as we speak is slowly becoming a White Zetsu. The longer he remains in this state, the weaker he becomes, and the more his body is transformed. It's only taking this long because the Divine Tree itself is defective, since it hasn't consumed an Otsutsuki. It's also doing this through a clogram that's connected to fragmented root systems that isn't even paired to a full body Tentacles. I mean, compare this to the war in Naruto. Obito was able to instantly decimate the battlefield by simply touching someone for a few seconds. Even Naruto, who possesses more chakra than most, was brought to his knees almost instantly, which kinda does support the argument of intent being a factor, but more so that the Tentacles in Naruto was a fully grown mature Tentacles, while the one in Boruto is referred to as a juvenile. This must have some significance to the level at which the Tentacles can function, which explains why it's taking so long. With that said, this also plays into Sasuke's next power-up as I mentioned in the chapter review, Based on Sakura saying that nothing appears to be different or modified in Moegi's case, that could be the case for Sasuke as well. It is of course 100% possible that all the tree does is take one's chakra for itself and slowly turns them into a white Zetsu over time. And obviously if Sasuke hasn't been turned into a white Zetsu as yet, despite being held captive for over 2 years, that also wouldn't be the case for Moegi, which would explain why Sakura didn't detect any abnormalities. So we might see a case where Sasuke doesn't even receive his hand or missing eye, much less a power boost greater than what he had before. Though there's also the possibility that the opposite happens instead. If it is the case that the longer one spends being a captive, the more the body is transformed, Sasuke's body might be partially modified at this point in time, which means that Sasuke's body is likely part Biju or Shinju per se. I say that because the evolution of the humans inside the trees should be a bit different from what happened with Kaguya's Tentacles. They shouldn't be ordinary white Zetsu, but instead divine tree beings similar to the Shinju. That's because whatever anime science took place with Code's karma and Shibai's claw marks, which became one with the Tentacles, altered the course of how the Tentacles typically behaves. So if the trees are indeed modifying the bodies of its captives similar to Kaguya's Tentacles, they should reflect the power of the current Tentacles, which as we've seen is what's known as the Shinju. That's how Sasuke can receive a new power-up, not from receiving Hidari's Thorn Soul Bulb, which doesn't transfer the power of the Shinju to the human as seen with Moegi, but instead through direct modification. And since his consciousness is still alive and apparently in the Thorn Soul Bulb itself, once returned he will gain access to that modified body, likely with a new Renegon and the left hand to boot. Or who knows, maybe they don't get there in time and Sasuke simply dies at the end of the story. That could also happen, I guess we'll see. With that said, that's it for the video. If you guys liked it, drop a like and don't forget to subscribe. And also, if you guys want to learn more about Boruto's connection to Shibai and why he is Shibai, check out this video on screen.